Welcome all of you. Welcome to our today's class of AKtU MOOCs lecture on environmental science subject. I am Rosalind Mishra, Assistant Professor, ITS College of Pharmacy. Welcome to today's class. In our today's class, we shall be discussing about aquatic ecosystem with reference to marine ecosystem. In our previous class, we had discussed in detail about the freshwater ecosystem, whereas in our today's class, we will be dealing with the other part or the other form of aquatic ecosystem, which is marine ecosystem. Now, before that, let us just have a small glimpse about aquatic ecosystems. Aquatic ecosystems deal with biotic community and abiotic components which are present in the water bodies. Okay. Now, in terrestrial ecosystem, the gases or the elements like carbon dioxide and oxygen, they are present in gaseous form, whereas in aquatic ecosystem these elements are present in dissolved states. Okay. Whereas depending upon the quality and nature of water, the aquatic ecosystem is characterized into freshwater ecosystem, marine ecosystem and estuarine ecosystem. With the help of this picture, I have tried to collect various kinds of aquatic ecosystem, wherein we have lakes, we have rivers, we have brackish water or the estuarine ecosystem, we have marine ecosystem, etc. Now, what are these marine ecosystem? What is meant by marine ecosystem? Marine ecosystems cover 70% of the earth's surface and have an average depth of 3750 meters, the greatest known depth being 10,750 meters, which is the Marianas Trench. Marine ecosystem, as you know, is one of the largest reservoirs of water. Living things and essential nutrients needed by both marine and land organisms. The total biomass in the marine ecosystem far exceeds that of all freshwater ecosystems put together. Let us now look into few salient features of marine ecosystems. Marine ecosystems are of great ecological significance. They have certain salient features which we have briefly elaborated here. Talking about the physico-chemical factors like salinity. The sea is salty and its salinity is fairly constant, averaging about 3.5% or 35 parts per thousand. Sodium chloride is the main salt here, around 27%, while the rest salt are namely calcium, potassium and magnesium salts. Light is a limiting factor in the ocean as it contributes significantly to organic production and distribution of marine life. The ocean is divisible on the basis of light penetration into two horizontal zones. Okay. So, we can divide the ocean into two horizontal zones depending upon the penetration of light. The first zone or the lighted photic or euphotic zone extending from the sea surface up to a depth of 200 meters. It is the first zone, also known as euphotic zone, which involves or which covers the surface up to 200 meters of depth. Here sufficient light reaches to support the photosynthesis. This zone, also known as photic zone, is also called as Epipelagic one. It is also called as the Epipelagic Zone. It is characterized by sharp gradient or light temperature and salinity. Okay. There is a sharp gradient in light and temperature or light, temperature and salinity. Okay. The amount of light reaching the lower level of this zone rarely exceeds 0.0001% of what is received at the surface. Below this is the aphotic zone. Okay. Now, let us just again look into the euphotic zone or the epiplastic zone. This is a lighted or a photic region. Okay. It ranges from the surface to 200 meters below the surface. Here sufficient light reaches to support the photosynthesis. This photic zone is also known as the epipelagic zone. It is characterized by sharp gradient or sharp difference in the light, temperature and salinity. Now, looking into the next zone, which is aphotic zone or the lightless zone. Aphotic zone or the lightless zone. Aphotic zone is distinguishable into 3 further subzones. Okay. This aphotic zone is further divided or distinguishable into 3 more regions. What are those regions? Number 1, the Mesopelagic zone. The Mesopelagic zone generally extends from 200 meters to 10 meters. This zone is in semi-darkness as very little light penetrates it. Okay. Next zone after the Mesopelagic zone is the Bathypelagic zone. It extends from 1200 to 1000 is the Mesopelagic zone. Below this is the Bathypelagic zone. It extends from 1000 meters to 2000 meters. Here the darkness is virtually complete for human. Okay. Some fishes and crustaceans do respond in this region to very dim lighting. The third zone or the lowermost zone is the Mesopelagic zone. Here permanent darkness prevails. Temperature is uniform at 3 degrees and hydrostatic pressure here is enormous. Okay. So, the marine ecosystem is divided into number 1, the photic region or the epipelagic region, which extends from surface to 200 meters, where there is abundant or sufficient light for the growth of organisms. Below this region comes the Mesopelagic region, which is 200 to 1000 meter depth. Here the light penetration is very little light penetrates this region. Okay. Next, the third region after Mesopelagic region is Bathypelagic region, which extends from 1000 to 2000 meters below. Only few fishes and crustaceans survive. And the third most zone is the Mesopelagic zone, where permanent darkness prevails and there is enormous hydrostatic pressure. So, the marine water ecosystem can be divided into 2 major zones, photic zone, aphotic zone. Aphotic zone can be further subdivided into Mesopelagic zone, Bathypelagic zone and Epipelagic zone, okay, depending upon the amount of very little light. Again the aphotic zone is divided. Next we will look into the biota or the living organisms which are found in the oceans. Life in the sea is not particularly abundant. Okay. So, life in the ocean is not very abundant. Though the diversity of organism here is very high, almost every major group of animal and every major group of algae occur somewhere in the oceans, with the exception of vascular plants and insects. These two have a few marine representatives, though they are abundant in estuaries. On the basis of depth-wise difference in life forms, the expanse of marine ecosystem has been divided into littoral zone, Narratic zone, Pelagic zone and the benthic zone. Okay. So, depending upon the marine representatives or depending upon the depth wise difference in the life forms, the oceans can be, or the marine ecosystem can be further divided into littoral zone, Narratic zone, Pelagic zones and benthic zones. Let us now read about the biota of each of these zones. The first zone or the littoral zone. This zone is the shore region of the marine ecosystem. It is subjected to violence of waves, tides and fluctuations of water level and variability of temperature, light, salinity and moisture. In common language, the supralittoral zone is the beach area. Considerable light penetrates the bottom of this zone, which is exposed and submerged twice a day, except during the tide pools. Thus, animals living here exists in a difficult environment. So, they must be either resistant to periodic drying or able to burrow into the water level. These littoral zones are also called as intertidal zones. Okay. So, littoral zones are also known as intertidal zones. Now, talking about the biota of Narratic ocean zones. What is this Narratic ocean zones? Just now we learnt about littoral zone. Now, the Narratic zone constitutes 75% of the total oceanic area. Narratic zone is makes the major part of the ocean area and is relatively rich in species and high in productivity, owing to factors such as penetration of light up to considerable depth and high concentration of nutrients. Okay. So, Narratic zone has a high concentration of nutrients, and the best part is the penetration of light in this zone is also abundant. No other region has such a variety of life, not even the tropical rainforests. Okay. So, the variety of life is abundant in the Narratic zones. The most productive phytoplanktons or the dinoflagellates and diatoms. These are the examples of phytoplanktons which are or which can be seen in the Narratic zone, namely dinoflagellates, diatoms, though red, brown and green algae attached to the bottom in the shallow regions may be significant. So, dinoflagellates and diatoms are the named phytoplanktons or the abundant phytoplanktons in this region. The zooplanktons are usually similar to those of the pelagic zones, though some purely open sea species are replaced by Narratic species. Temporary zooplanktons are also much numerous here than in the open sea. Okay. So, temporary zooplanktons are also found in this region. Nectons. So, after littoral Narratic ocean zone, apart from phytoplanktons and zooplanktons, nectons are also found. Nectons in the ocean are found over the Narratic zone or the continental shelf are diverse. They are commonly known for, they include almost all commercial species as well as whale, seals, sea otters, sea snakes, large squids, etc. Fishes are numerous and include several shark species as well as herring like species. Sea trout, salmon, flatfish, mackerels, tuna, etc. are the nectons which are found in this Narratic zones. The benthic part of the Narratic zone is called the sublittoral zone. Okay. The benthic part of this Narratic zone is called the sublittoral zone. It has a wide variety of animals, some of which can be named as clams, shrimps, snails, lobsters, crabs, sea cucumbers, starfishes, brittle stars, anemones, sponges, bryozoa, annelids and foraminiferas. These animals exhibit more diversity than those of the deeper waters, since the physical factors here are more variable. The bottom may be rocky, it may be sandy or muddy, and the temperature difference in the sublittoral zone of this region is greater as compared to the deeper ecosystems. The difference in the physical environment is reflected in the benthic community occurring here. Now, talking about the biota of the pelagic zone. If we speak about the biota in the pelagic zone, then the pelagic region constitutes 90% of the total ocean surface. The pelagic region constitutes about 90% of the total ocean surface. It is less rich in species and number of organisms than the two regions which were discussed before. The species of this zone are characteristics. The environment due to the species here are characteristic to the environment due to the continuity of the sea water is uniform and stable for the organism which are found here. The most abundant pelagic phytoplanktons are still the dinoflagellates. Okay. Now, we will just have a brief glance over the biota of the Narratic zone. So, in the Narratic zone, the major biota which are found are nectons. Nectons, these are larger creatures, okay, namely of commercial importance, namely sharks, whales, sea otters, seals, large number of different types of fishes like salmons, mackerels, tuna, bonito, etc. The next part is, after the nectons, the other part is the benthic or the sublittoral zone, which has a wide variety of animal, namely the smaller ones like clams, shrimps, snails, bryozoa, annelids, etc. Okay. Next, the third community or the pelagic zone, they constitute 90% of the total ocean surface and less rich in species. Okay. The species here is less richer. The species of this zone are characteristics, because the environment here is harsh, hence the species here are characteristic or special to this very zone. So, after marine water ecosystem, now we shall be discussing about estuaries. What are estuaries? All the rivers and lakes ultimately drain into the sea. Okay. However, many rivers develop a highly specialized zone before joining the proper sea. This zone is called the estuary. Okay. All the rivers and lakes, they ultimately enter into the sea, but before entering into the sea, there is a special zone. This zone is known as the estuary. An estuary is a transitional zone between rivers and sea. They represent an ectone possessing unique ecological features and biotic communities. Estuaries are the most productive ecosystems of the world. An estuary is semi-enclosed part of the coastal ocean containing brackish water that has free connection with the sea on one side, and on the other side it is connected with freshwater river mouth and receives, as I said, fresh water. In India, estuaries can be seen in plenty along the coast of Kerala. Okay. So, estuaries can be characterized by two distinctive regions. One mouth which is opening to the salty water or the ocean or the sea. The other mouth which is adjoined by fresh water flowing from lakes and rivers. Now, let us look into the various features of estuaries. The physico-chemical properties of the estuaries have large variations in several parameters, and this often creates stressful environment for the organisms. This is the one cause that large organisms are less in number in this area than the smaller organism. The most dominant feature of the estuarine environment is the fluctuation in the salinity. Though salinity gradient exists sometimes in an estuary, but the pattern of gradient, the estuaries are dominated by muddy substrates which are often very soft. The deposition of particles is also controlled by currents. Size of the particle is also controlled by currents. If strong currents prevail, the substrate will be coarse, whereas waters are calm and currents are weak, only free silt will settle. These particles in the estuary are of many organic origin, derived from both the terrestrial and the marine environment. As a result, the accumulated substrate is very rich. Another important variable here is temperature. The temperature of estuary keeps on fluctuating, heats up and cools down more rapidly under prevailing atmospheric condition. The surface water have greatest temperature range, deepest water have small temperature range. The estuarine community is a mixture of three components: marine, freshwater and brackish water, but overall diversity is still lower than that of the river community. So, the different types of biota which are found in estuaries are phytoplanktons, mud flat algae, marginal marsh vegetations and epiphytic plants. Okay. The obvious estuarine plants are the marginal and the marsh vegetations. A few animals feed on them directly, but a large proportion is consumed as detritus. The best known estuarine animals are detritus feeders such as oysters, clams, lobsters and crabs. Plants adapted to the difficult conditions of salinity found in the estuary can maintain a high level of productivity. the amount of nutrition rich organic detritus also allow a high level of productivity. So, with this we end our unit of ecosystem. Thank you all for being with me.